On Campaign 2016, back with us now, Dr. Stephen Caliendo, Professor of Political Science and the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at North Central College. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's too much for you, Alan.
A very long and official title. But,
yeah, well, if you can't, it can't be substantive. You got to wow them with it.
Well, the fact that you're a political science professor clearly plays into what we're discussing this morning. Yeah. A lot of people very, very confused because we followed the polls this entire election, and clearly something was off about them. Why do you think the pollsters got it so wrong with how this election would play out?
It's going to take some time to know, but I think some things we can know. One of the things that's really hard for pollsters to do when trying to predict voting outcome is figuring out who's going to show up and vote. You just can't ask people, do you plan to vote? Because if you do that, you get like 85% of people saying they're going to vote. We've never had voter turnout that high. So what you have to do is you have to do some combination of what they say, how passionate they seem to be, and what their voting history was. And so there's usually some formula that the pollsters come up with. They clearly got this one wrong as they were statistically weighting things and trying to figure out who was going to actually show up at the polls.
It's interesting because when I walked in this morning, to me, it seemed a little bit like Brexit. You know, the people who, maybe the pollsters weren't talking to the right people. It seemed like city centers went blue like they usually do. But, you know, that Rust Belt right in the middle of the country that's really hurting right now, you know, were we not listening to those people?
I think probably. I think the Brexit's a pretty apt analogy here. I think we're starting to see, we saw that sweep across Europe, particularly of movements that are fearful or concerned about immigration, about otherness, about being too involved throughout the world. That was very much a central part of Donald Trump's campaign, and the folks that came out to support him. I should note, though, I mean, white voters were a slightly smaller percentage of the overall voting population yesterday than they were 4 years ago. Donald Trump did a little bit better with African Americans and a little bit better with Latinos than Mitt Romney did.
But he won that white suburban vote, which consistently pollsters and every other pundit was saying that he wouldn't do. Maybe in Florida they said he would get it, but it just didn't turn out that way.
He won with whites the whole way across the board, according to the exit polls, including those with college education. I mean, and I think there was some expectation that that Hillary Clinton would do better with that population, and particularly women with college educations, but not so much with the white folks.
And didn't do as well as Obama did. Were you surprised? Were you surprised at all? Because throughout this election, people have had a lot to say about Donald Trump. Obviously, a very polarizing candidate.
That's right.
But he defeated 17 Republicans in the beginning, you know, and then won the presidency last night, defeating the Democratic Party as well. Clearly, he did something right.
He did lots right, but he didn't do almost none of it did he do by the playbook that has been shown to be right throughout. We talked about this when I came back from Cleveland from the Republican National Convention. That was a weird convention. He didn't do it any way like the book and any way that's supposed to be done. And I think that's what people like. That's what people gravitated toward.
And campaigning in those states that we thought that he would never win, that are either now a toss-up or in his favor.
To be really silly campaign decisions throughout. He didn't even have that much money. He hardly spent very much money. He didn't have a ground game. People came out organically for him. I heard a lot of posturing last night about, well, what if he would have shown the side that he showed during his acceptance speech last night, or his victory speech? What if he would have shown that throughout the campaign? He probably wouldn't have done as well. It was the fact that he was non-traditional, the fact that he was ruffling feathers, that got people really excited about him, and that swept him into the White House.
Really changed a lot of things.
A lot of things are going to change,
So many more questions for you. We'll see you again in half an hour, right?
Stick around. I'll stick around. I'll be here.
Thanks, Professor.